I think I read Aragon when I was in the 7th grade. So over the years, I've read a few more of the other books, but I hadn't gotten to Inheritance. And this was finally a chance for me to return to the fantasy genre as an adult and see if it still holds my interest, which I'm very happy and thankful to Christopher Paolini for writing so well that it did pull me back into the genre. Some people might not be too interested into fantasy, but I would argue they should reconsider, because who doesn't love an epic adventure story set over a beautiful landscape, for example, usually in medieval times with magic? It's like being born into another world again. The first theme with which I would like to start the discussion is heroism. For me, even though Aragon is the main hero of the book, I found other ones more impressive. The first one was Aragon's cousin Roran. He's really interesting because he's not like the other main characters in the books. He can't use magic. He doesn't have a dragon. He is just basically a blacksmith or a farmer, I believe he was. So his nickname is Strong Hammer. Roran Stronghammer. So he relies on his strength, physical ability, and prowess. And besides that, he also proves to be a genius of fighting. You wouldn't think so, being a farmer basically in his upbringing, but over and over again he's had to face impossible situations, and he finds the answer to the puzzle every time in dire circumstances. So one of his heroic feats was the conquest of the city Aros, and the readers can read more about that in the books. His other great achievement was the end battle when he had to face Lord Barst. Lord Barst is someone endowed with magic abilities, so much so that he's dwarfing everybody else. He has, it's described like a barrel chest plate, and inside is the Eldenari. It's like a gem with dragon energy and consciousness in it, and he can draw magic from it, and he uses it to create wards around himself so nobody can touch him. Swords can't reach him, arrows neither, and magic fails. Meanwhile, he also superpowers himself by drawing energy. He makes himself extremely strong. He becomes sort of this Hulk figure. He carries a club, and with it, wielding it like a switch, it's described in the books, he just swings it and folds people in half, basically, and sends them flying, and then they don't move anymore. It's over. But Roran thinks of another genius plan to neutralize his wards, basically waste all his magic except for his strength. And then it comes down to a battle of hand-to-hand combat, and they start Greco-Roman wrestling, and Roran is basically finished from the battle at this point, but it's his will that carries him to the end. He manages to get behind Barst and grab him in a bear hug. It's described as if his arms are going to fall off. That's how hard he's pulling. And he crumples this chest plate with the Eldenari inside and sort of implodes on Barst. The other hero that shines in this book, I would say more than Aragon, is his counterpart, Arya the elf. And she's just fierce like a lioness. There's this one part where she charges after the dragon Thorn and his rider Murtagh, and she jumps and clings onto the dragon, and they're fighting in midair. She gets thrown. She uses magic to hold herself in place, while Thorn circles around and smashes her with his tail. Now, this would be like an extremely light human being, because she's an elf, so she'd be even lighter. Getting hit by something drastically outweighing an elephant. So it sends her flying, and it seems like she's going to die from the impact. And she's like a meteorite falling out of the sky. But again, she somehow survives it because of her wards. They protected her. She recovers from the unconsciousness, and she continues with the battle. So she's extremely impressive. That and another scene, she and Aragon are manacled. So basically like this over their heads, and they're going to be eaten alive by these beasts. But they're desperate. They can't use their magic or anything. And what she ends up doing is using her elf strength to rip her hand out, but the manacles are magically strengthened, so it sort of folds up all the skin, leaving whatever else is underneath, and she passes out from the pain again. But yeah, Eragon didn't do that. He was going to, but by the time he did it, she beat him to it. So to me, Arya and Roran are the biggest heroes of the book. The second point I wanted to cover was the topic of love. So imagine being the last of your race. So we're talking about Saphira now, the female dragon, and there are basically two other dragons that are male. One is Thorn, as we already discussed, who, like his rider Murtagh, is both good and bad. He's almost like a Byronic hero, troubled in many ways, traumatized by the things he's been forced to do, almost in slavery. And the other dragon is Firnin, and he's the new dragon. So basically he's born after the war, and he's very pure, light in everything. He basically, I think he doesn't have much experience. He's only alive for a very short time, compared to the other one, Thorn, that's been through war alongside friends and foes, and so he's made some mistakes, but he's also shown a noble cause and has managed to find the right side. So between the two of them, which one do you think is more interesting for example, like a relationship for Saphira? Do we leave Thorn aside? I don't know. I almost feel like he could have gotten more of a chance. Maybe he will in the future, who knows, but so Firnin was probably the logical choice, if not the choice of the heart. The other relationship we could mention here is between Arya and Eragon. It was very interesting to me in that the story brings them together in every way. They're companions of war, and they share their true names with one another. But at the same time, I see Arya almost stalling, kind of holding back all the while. So it was clear from Eragon that he was interested all along, but she doesn't quite know. And you might say there are many different reasons, but I was wondering, what is the true reason? I think the deeper reason would be that she's much older than Eragon. They look the same, because she's elvish and doesn't age. But Eragon is only maybe 20 years old, and Arya would be over 100. I don't know her exact age, but she'd have a lot more life experience than him. So again, she might not. And on the other hand, she's the bigger hero in my eyes. And she gets to become a queen of the elves in the end. I don't know, maybe she's out of his league. So I would imagine this going, they had to separate, but I would imagine Eragon would need a lot more life experience to live his own life, to develop, to mature, and then maybe they can reconvene and it might be a different story. Do you think perhaps they're not the best match? It's almost like circumstances forcing them to be together? Or do you think everything will work out? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. They might be slightly different, maybe in the future, but again, is that true love? It's supposed to be easy, isn't it? And finally, the last theme of discussion today is villainy, starting with King Galbatorix. So what we know about him is more through the legends and the histories and the stories. We know he's cruel, psychopathic, and all that, but we didn't really see too much of that in the novels, did we? I would argue not. We saw rather more his charms, which were supposed to be there to make him interesting and balanced and deceptive, but we didn't see too much of that crazy in him. We didn't see too much of the darkness, the evil. Even the last battle between Eragon and Galbatorix was not as long as I thought. In comparison to, for example, everything that Roran had to do, I feel like there could have been some sword fighting between Eragon and the king, and then maybe incurred the king's wrath to use magic, in which case the king would have crushed Aragon and held him at his mercy, and then maybe Aragon would have used verbal provocations finally to get the king to attack him with his mind, and then the story could have finished the way it did. So I felt like the final and most important battle could have been a little bit more drawn out to give Aragon more of a chance to shine. So it felt like he's a medium hero in my eyes, I think. And Galbatorix, likewise, is like a medium villain. He's supposed to be more, but we didn't quite see that. So for the next book, again along these lines of villainy, the next book is supposed to be Murtagh. It's probably on its way to being finished at the moment. I would like to see Murtagh, again like Thorn, he is a traumatized hero with nobler aspirations. It would be interesting to see that kind of a character, a hero with a dark side, how he's going to redeem himself. And I would suggest that it would be interesting to have a villain even worse than Galbatorix. I read that it's supposed to be some kind of witch. I would give her no good qualities, basically, at first thought. Make her as cruel as possible, and underhanded, and vicious, and for Murtagh to have to bring out that monster from within himself to sort her out. So that would be interesting, and then also to return to the good side in the end. So I was wondering whether, following a major storyline like this one, whether any additional sequels, almost like side stories, might pale in comparison, but I think they might not, because Murtagh would be a darker hero, which I have to say would be more interesting, I think. So there's definitely room to even improve upon the story. If it's not of the same magnitude of importance, it could be in artistic output and exploration. So all the best to Christopher Paolini, and I can't wait to read the next one.